The first light of day slowly crept over the streets of London. In front of Buckingham Palace, the morning unfolded with its usual splendor. The warm summer air, with a light breeze, had drawn a crowd to the gates of the palace. Sunlight spilled through the ornate iron railings, making the stone courtyard glimmer like gold. People were everywhere, snapping photos, soaking in the moment, while children's excited laughter softened the heavy air of history. The Queen's guards stood tall at their posts, motionless, expressionless. But make no mistake, their stillness wasn't weakness, it was discipline. No matter the noise, the shouts, or the flashing cameras, their focus never wavered. They were trained for this. For Guard Thomas Wickliffe, it was just another shift. 14 years of service under his belt, he had faced far worse than noisy tourists. He'd endured the blistering heat of Iraq, the tension of long nights where danger lurked behind every shadow. Now, dressed in his scarlet uniform and towering bearskin hat, he stood before the palace, a living symbol of duty and honor. Every morning, as he buttoned his jacket and polished each brass button until it gleamed, he quietly reminded himself, "Standing here isn't just for show. Standing here is for protection." The crowd swelled as the day went on. Families, newlyweds, solo travelers, all eager to catch a glimpse of history. Thomas had seen it all before. Children staring wide-eyed in awe, tourists getting a little too bold with their antics, but he always knew where the line was. And when it was about to be crossed, that day, it was. Around midday, an uneasy shift rippled through the crowd. Whispers spread, people shuffled, sensing something wasn't right. A middle-aged man, big and rough around the edges, pushed his way to the front. His face was flushed, sweat beading on his forehead. His bloodshot eyes scanned the scene with a sneer. Beside him, a young boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, walked nervously, casting anxious glances at the towering gates and the guards beyond. The man was clearly drunk. His breath reeked of alcohol, and his anger bubbled just beneath the surface. He suddenly raised his voice, slurring his words. "So these are the famous soldiers, huh?" He shouted mockingly. "Hey, kid, look real close." They won't even flinch. The man was clearly drunk. His breath reeked of alcohol, and his anger bubbled just beneath the surface. He suddenly raised his voice, slurring his words. "So these are the famous soldiers, huh?" He shouted mockingly. "Hey, kid, look real close." They won't even flinch. The boy stumbled, catching himself just in time, but the man wasn't done. He grabbed the boy by the shoulder, forcefully dragging him toward the palace gates. Fear spread across the child's face, pure and unmistakable. People gasped. Some stepped forward to help, but the man's wild shouting kept them at bay. And that's when Thomas Wickliffe's years of training snapped into place. If there's a threat, you act. It was drilled into him over and over. Without hesitation, Thomas moved. The sound of his boots echoing across the stone courtyard sent chills through the crowd. The sudden motion from a guard, usually as still as a statue, made every head turn. The sea of people instinctively parted. The man continued to shove the child, unaware of the shadow closing in behind him. "Sir, step away from the child." "Now," Thomas commanded, his voice sharp and clear. The man staggered, glared at the guard, and slurred, "What are you gonna do?" "You're not allowed to move," but he already had. And in that moment, the world saw the truth. The Queen's guards are not just ornaments of tradition. Thomas advanced with precision. In one swift move, he grabbed the man's arm, twisting it just enough to make him release the boy. The man yelped in pain, his bravado crumbling. The child bolted, running straight into the arms of his mother, tears streaming down his face. Applause erupted from the crowd. Cheers, claps, even a few tears. Some captured the moment on their phones, replaying it in awe. Palace security rushed in, taking control of the scene and cuffing the man, who was now thoroughly subdued. Amid the buzz of voices, someone in the crowd shouted loud enough for all to hear, "Now that's a real guard." But for Thomas Wickliffe, it was never about the glory. It wasn't about the cameras or the cheers. It was about the oath he'd taken, the silent promise behind the polished buttons and bright red jacket. And that day, in front of Buckingham Palace, every person in that crowd witnessed it for themselves. The Queen's guards aren't just relics of the past, they're guardians of the present.